The arrival? In the year 2247, humanity's curiosity about the universe was finally rewarded. It all began with a shimmer in the sky, a ripple of light that signaled the arrival of the Collins. These alien beings arrived in sleek, silver ships that defied the laws of physics as humanity understood them. Their vessels glided effortlessly through the cosmos, their designs impossibly advanced, sending waves of wonder and apprehension across Earth. The Collins were unlike anything humans had ever seen. When their ships descended into Earth's atmosphere, they appeared to float, their edges glowing faintly, as though the ships were made of liquid light. The alien species, too, was strange to behold. Their skin was translucent, shimmering with an inner radiance. Long limbs, almost ethereal in appearance, extended from their bodies, and their eyes, those vast, reflective eyes, seemed to see more than the human eye could ever fathom. They made their presence known with a broadcast. The message, transmitted across all frequencies, was instantly translated by Earth's most advanced algorithms. The words echoed through every device on the planet. "We are the Collins, travelers and explorers of the universe. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship." For a moment, the world held its collective breath. Leaders from the United Earth Federation, UEF, scrambled to respond. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity, and soon, a summit was arranged. Representatives from both species would meet on the International Space Station, which had been modified to accommodate the Collins' unique biology. When the humans and Collins finally met face to face, there was an air of cautious optimism. The Collins were polite, but carried an unmistakable aura of superiority. They spoke in soft, melodic tones, admiring Earth's cultures and history, though often in a way that felt patronizing. The human representatives, including Dr. Elena Martinez, an engineer and historian, struggled to mask their growing frustration. They had hoped for a partnership, a mutual exchange of knowledge, but instead they felt like their planet was being studied as though it were a specimen in a lab. Despite this, the UEF pushed forward, hoping to establish a positive relationship with the Collins. Perhaps the aliens' advanced technology could benefit humanity. The Collins, for their part, seemed to regard Earth's technology with mild interest, yet often implied that humans were still in their infancy compared to the wonders of the universe. The summit continued for weeks, but the true test of this budding alliance would come when the Collins invited humanity to visit their home planet, Caller. It was to be a grand exhibition, showcasing the technological marvels of many civilizations from across the stars. The UEF eagerly accepted the invitation, preparing the best and brightest examples of Earth's advancements: quantum computers, sustainable energy solutions, and even a prototype for faster-than-light travel. But there was one addition to the display that Dr. Martinez insisted upon: an ancient human ballistic gun, a relic from Earth's past. Dr. Martinez believed the gun symbolized humanity's long journey from primitive tools to the advanced technology they now boasted. It was a testament to human resilience and progress. But when the human delegation presented the gun at the exhibition on Caller, the Collins' reaction was not what they had hoped for. The Collins looked at the weapon with amusement, as if it were nothing more than a child's toy. They laughed openly, dismissing it with barely concealed ridicule. Primitive, they murmured among themselves. "A child's plaything," one of them said, sneering at the old relic. The humans were stunned. The Collins had shown little respect for Earth's past, let alone for the weapon that had once played such an important role in human history. Dr. Martinez, her cheeks flushed with anger, stepped forward. "You misunderstand," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "This gun represents the struggle, the fight, and the sacrifice of humanity's evolution. It is not just a weapon, it's a symbol of our resilience." The Collins weren't interested in the explanation. To them, humanity's past was nothing more than a curiosity. They were too far removed from such primitive notions to understand the significance of the gun. They continued to mock it, laughing in their alien way. They had seen the weapon as nothing more than a relic, a toy from a bygone era. But what the Collins didn't know was that the weapon was far more than a symbol. Hidden within its outdated design was a piece of technology that even they hadn't anticipated. And before long, the Collins would find themselves staring in shock as that very weapon struck back in a way they could never have predicted. The unexpected strike. The Collins' mocking laughter echoed through the grand hall on caller, but Dr. Elena Martinez remained unfazed. She could feel the weight of the ancient gun in her hands, and despite the Collins' dismissive attitude, she knew something they didn't. The weapon they had so ridiculed was not just a remnant of humanity's past. It was a carefully engineered marvel, a piece of forgotten technology that had evolved with hidden potential. Dr. Martinez's mind raced. She had always known that there was something more to the ancient gun than met the eye. It wasn't just a primitive tool for warfare. It had been part of a secret project, a defense system designed to protect Earth from the most unexpected threats. It was designed to be adaptable, evolving over time with the technology that powered it, creating something far beyond its original form. The humans in the room didn't know it, but this toy had the potential to challenge the most advanced alien species in the galaxy. The Collins, in their arrogance, had failed to recognize the subtleties of Earth's ingenuity. They believed their superior technology made them untouchable, that no primitive weapon could ever pose a threat to them. But there was a reason Earth had thrived in the cosmos, a reason that despite all their flaws, humans had managed to survive against overwhelming odds. It was their ability to adapt, to turn the tide even in the most dire situations. And now, the Collins would experience this firsthand. Dr. Martinez took a deep breath, preparing herself for the moment to come. She had been working on a hidden upgrade to the gun, something no one, not even the UEF, had known about. The gun's modifications had been completed just before the summit, but she had been careful not to reveal it to anyone. Her mind had been focused on making sure humanity was seen as more than just an inferior species. She had been prepared for this exact moment. As the Collins continued to laugh, one of them, a tall, imposing figure named Vorik, stepped forward. His translucent skin shimmered as he raised a hand dismissively, as if swatting away an annoying fly. "You speak of resilience," Vorik said in a voice that echoed with condescension, "but you fail to see that you are still bound by outdated technology. This weapon is no more than a toy from a barbaric past." He gestured toward the gun, and the other Collins chuckled. But there was a glint in their eyes, something that made Dr. Martinez's pulse quicken. She wasn't sure if it was curiosity or the thrill of something more sinister, but the Collins were intrigued by the gun's presence. Without warning, Dr. Martinez pressed a small, concealed button on the weapon's side. The gun hummed to life, its internal mechanisms shifting and transforming. The Collins froze, their expressions faltering. This wasn't supposed to happen. They had expected the weapon to remain inert, nothing more than a relic of a time long past. But something was happening, something they didn't understand. The ancient gun's barrel pulsed with energy, and for the first time since its arrival on caller, the Collins' advanced technology faltered. A strange ripple spread across the room, a distortion in the air that could be felt in the pit of the stomach. The Collins glanced at each other, confused. What was this? A malfunction? An error in their system? The gun fired. But instead of a traditional blast, the shot was a wave of concentrated energy, a force of pure kinetic power, enhanced by centuries of accumulated technological evolution. The beam shot through the air like a bolt of lightning, striking the center of the Collins control systems that operated the entire exhibition hall. The room erupted into chaos. The Collins' advanced technology, so proud and invincible, was now compromised. Their sophisticated energy shields flickered and failed, their control systems sparking as if they had been caught in a storm. Panic rippled through the alien delegation as they scrambled to regain control, but the disruption was too much. For the first time, they were vulnerable. The gun had struck with a force that no one, not even the Collins themselves, had anticipated. Dr. Martinez stood there, her heart pounding, as the Collins scrambled to contain the damage. The ancient weapon had done what no one thought possible. It had proven that humanity's strength didn't lie solely in the advanced technology they sought to acquire, but in their capacity to innovate, to adapt, and to surprise. What the Collins saw as a primitive weapon had struck back with a power that was uniquely human, resilient, resourceful, and full of potential. Vorak, the Collins representative who had mocked the gun, now stood frozen in place, his eyes wide with disbelief. The other Collins backed away, confusion written across their faces. Their once confident demeanor had shattered, and in its place, a sense of unease took hold. You've done something to it," Vorak stammered, his voice no longer full of arrogance. "This is not possible. Your technology, it's evolving on its own." "How?" Dr. Martinez, her mind racing, stepped forward. "It's not the gun. It's humanity. We adapt. We evolve. We may not have your advanced technology, but we have something more. We never stop looking for ways to improve, to change, to survive. That's what this gun represents." She paused, watching the Collins' stunned reactions. For the first time, they seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about a gun. It was about humanity's journey, their resilience in the face of the unknown, their unwillingness to be overlooked or dismissed. The gun was only the beginning. The Collins, still struggling to regain control over their malfunctioning systems, had no idea what they had just unleashed. Humanity, with all its flaws and imperfections, had just shown them that there was something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The primitive weapon had struck back, and now the Collins would have to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the human race. But this was only the beginning of the story. What would happen next, as tensions rose and the balance of power shifted, was something the Collins were not prepared for. And humanity, led by Dr. Martinez and the other brave souls in the UEF, would soon find themselves at the center of a conflict that would change the course of history forever. The shifting balance. The explosion of chaos in the hall felt almost like a rupture in time. The Collins, a species once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves scrambling to understand what had just transpired. For all their millennia of advancement, they were now facing something that left them vulnerable. The ancient gun, seemingly just a relic of a bygone age, had shattered their calm facade of invincibility. Dr. Elena Martinez stood still amidst the disarray, her eyes scanning the panicked movements of the Collins. Their high-tech devices were failing, their elite soldiers struggling to regain control of their systems. It was clear that they weren't used to this kind of challenge. For the first time, humanity had leveled the playing field, and they hadn't even revealed their trump card. The energy that surged from the gun had been designed to disrupt, but it was more than that. It was a beacon. A beacon that called out to the universe, drawing attention to the clash between two vastly different forces. But the ripple effect would not just stop with the Collins, it was spreading. As the Collins stumbled to regain their composure, the hum of the gun faded, but Dr. Martinez knew that this moment of uncertainty was just the beginning. It wasn't enough to just neutralize them. It wasn't even enough to show that humanity had a weapon capable of standing up to the alien threat. What mattered now was to assert humanity's place in this galaxy, to show that Earth, despite all odds, was more than a small, insignificant dot in the vastness of space. They had to push further. The leaders of the UEF, the United Earth Federation, had been watching from the shadows, their faces unreadable. They'd known the risks of trying to provoke the Collins, but they'd underestimated how much humanity could endure. The confrontation in the hall had escalated quickly, but it wasn't over yet. As tension swirled and arguments broke out among the Collins, Elena's communicator buzzed in her ear. "Dr. Martinez," a voice crackled, "you need to get out of there. Now, the Council is demanding an explanation, and if you stay, we might lose everything we've worked for." The voice belonged to Commander Ivan Hawk, a trusted ally and the leader of the UEF's ground forces. Elena clenched her fist, not out of fear, but frustration. She had prepared for this moment for years, for the culmination of all the work she put into humanity's defense. And now, in the heat of the moment, she was being told to retreat. "I can't," she replied sharply, her voice unwavering. "This is our chance, Ivan. We have to show them that we won't be bullied, that we have power too. This isn't just about defense, it's about our future." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Ivan's voice softened, but still with urgency. "Elena, I understand. But you're not the only one with a stake in this. If the Collins retaliate—" "I know," she interrupted, her voice steady but resolute. "But they've underestimated us for too long. This isn't just about one weapon. This is about a message. We're going to give it to them." As she spoke those words, a chilling realization settled in her stomach. She wasn't just talking about the Collins anymore. She was talking about something much larger. The galaxy was watching. And in that moment, she wasn't just a scientist from Earth. She was a symbol, a harbinger of something more. Elsewhere in the vast council chambers, Vorak, the tall Collins representative, paced back and forth in front of a holographic display, his fingers trembling as he tried to reboot their systems. The chaos that had ensued after the gun fired was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. His race, advanced and calculating, was not accustomed to a challenge they couldn't immediately neutralize. Yet this primitive Earth weapon had done something extraordinary. It had thrown their perfect world into disarray, exposing their weakness. Vorak's mind raced. His mission was simple: maintain the Collins' superiority over lesser species, particularly humans. Yet this single, seemingly inconsequential action by one human, Dr. Elena Martinez, had shifted everything. The power dynamics were suddenly in flux, and Vorak knew that the Collins were on the precipice of something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. But he wasn't the only one with thoughts of retribution. As he turned to face the council, his voice cut through the hum of discussions. "We've underestimated them," he said, his voice low, almost angry. "This is no accident. This weapon, it's not just a relic. It's a part of a much larger plan. And if we don't act now, if we don't strike before they're ready, we won't strike." A voice interrupted from across the room. It was Mornak, another Collins official, his tone ice-cold. "Not yet." The room fell silent. Vorak turned sharply to face him. "You would allow them to keep their advantage." "We are not in control of this situation anymore," Mornak replied, his voice unwavering. "And striking against a species this unpredictable would be foolish. We must watch, observe, understand their next move. If they can disrupt our technology, we need to know why. We need to understand their evolution, their true capabilities." Vorak bristled at the suggestion, but he knew better than to argue in front of the council. The decision had been made. The Collins would retreat for now, perhaps only for a moment. But the suspicion lingered. What was Elena Martinez really hiding? Back on Earth, the news of the disruption at the summit spread like wildfire. Global broadcasts, once dominated by the traditional political tensions of Earth's nations, were now filled with reports of the first major clash between humanity and the Collins. Experts scrambled to interpret what had happened. Was this the beginning of a new war? Could Earth truly stand up to a galactic empire? Dr. Martinez's actions became the talk of the world. The UEF, now united in a singular cause, began to assemble forces across the globe, preparing for whatever came next. But there was no turning back now. Elena knew that this was only the opening chapter of something far greater. The UEF had only begun to understand the scope of the conflict that was unfolding, and it wasn't just the Collins they had to worry about. As the gun had fired and disrupted the Collins technology, it had inadvertently attracted the attention of other galactic players, other species who had watched humanity from the shadows, calculating whether Earth was a threat or an opportunity. The realization hit Elena like a wave. This was not just about defending Earth. It was about positioning humanity as a player on the galactic stage. The ancient gun had not just struck the Collins, it had awakened the universe's interest in Earth. And now, The question was no longer if humanity could survive the coming storm, but how they would rise to the challenge. The crossroads of destiny. The news that had erupted across Earth following the disruption at the Collins Summit had ignited a firestorm of debate, fear, and hope. In the span of a few hours, humanity had become both a beacon of resistance and an object of suspicion across the galaxy. Governments scrambled to assess the implications of the event, while citizens flooded the streets, unsure of what to make of their newfound position in a vast, interconnected cosmos. Dr. Elena Martinez, her role as a symbol of humanity's defiance only growing, stood at the epicenter of this maelstrom. Her phone had not stopped ringing. In the wake of the chaos, her name had become synonymous with both a new hope for Earth and a symbol of imminent danger. But Elena wasn't interested in the fame that was being thrust upon her. Her mind was elsewhere, focused on the implications of the weapon she had unleashed, a weapon that had disrupted not only the Collins but also piqued the interest of other galactic powers. Standing in the sleek, metallic corridors of the UEF Command Center, Elena felt a growing unease. The UEF had already begun to mobilize, but there was more to this moment than military strategy. There was a need for something more profound. The world had been forever changed, and humanity needed to figure out what it wanted from this newfound position in the universe. "What are we doing, Elena?" Commander Ivan Hawke's voice broke through her thoughts. He had arrived at the command center a few minutes ago, his face weary, but his expression determined. "The Collins are retreating, but there are others, alien forces out there who are watching. What's our next move?" Elena met his gaze, her eyes hardening as she thought about the decision that lay ahead. The Collins were regrouping, their arrogance now marred by the realization that they were not invincible. But the Collins were only one piece of the puzzle. The gun had caused a ripple, and soon, other factions, races they had never even known existed, would begin to make their presence felt. "We need to prepare, Ivan," Elena replied, her voice steady. "This was only a test, and the universe is watching us now. The question is, what will they see when they look at us?" Far above the Earth, in the vast emptiness of space, the ship that had once belonged to the Collins flotilla now drifted silently, crippled by the effects of the gun. Inside its reinforced walls, Vorik and his council members convened, but it wasn't just them. There were others in the room, emissaries from other galactic powers who had come to hear the Collins report on what had transpired. "We were careless," Vorik said, his voice strained. He could feel the weight of the council's disappointment pressing down on him. "The human weapon." "The human weapon disrupted our systems," Mornek interrupted coldly. "But it is not the weapon that concerns me. It's the humans themselves." Vorik looked up sharply, his eyes narrowing. "What are you suggesting, Mornek?" "There is something far more dangerous than their primitive technology," Mornek replied, his voice icy. "It is their ability to unite, to become a collective force in the face of overwhelming odds. For centuries, we have dealt with lesser species, species that fracture under pressure, species that submit to their fate. But humans, they resist, they adapt. And that is why we must act carefully. We cannot underestimate them again." Vorik didn't respond immediately. He'd seen the reports, how the Earth's inhabitants had risen in protest and defiance after the gun's activation, how entire cities had marched to the front lines to support the UEF's cause. If Mornek was right, and he usually was, the humans were not like any species the Collins had encountered. Their resilience, their unpredictability, was more dangerous than any weapon. And they had just sent a message. Mornek continued, "We need to understand them before we make our move. We need to learn everything about their psyche, their leaders, their social structures. If we strike without full knowledge, we risk pushing them into a corner. And we cannot afford another failure." Back on Earth, Elena stood on the balcony of the UEF headquarters, watching the city lights below. It was a strange comfort, the hum of civilization moving forward, as though nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Humanity was no longer a passive observer of the stars. They had become a part of the cosmic conversation. The UEF had started discussions with other galactic factions. The growing fear among the colons had led to secretive negotiations with several neutral powers, all of them seeking to understand what had happened and how they might benefit from the unfolding situation. But there was an undercurrent to these discussions, an unspoken question that no one dared to ask directly. Should Earth be treated as an ally or an enemy? A new message arrived from one of the neutral factions, the Silurians. They were a mysterious species, their true form never fully understood by humans, and their ship, an immense, spherical craft, had appeared at the edges of the solar system. This was the first time their emissaries had reached out, and the UEF had been in a frenzy, unsure of what to expect. As Elena read the message, her heart skipped a beat. The Silurians wanted to meet, and their terms were simple. Earth's survival depended on its ability to prove itself as a force capable of making its own decisions. In other words, the Silurians had extended an invitation to humanity, an invitation to enter a council of galactic powers, but only if they could prove that they weren't just a pawn in the intergalactic game. They were being offered a seat at the table, but with strings attached. "We have to decide," Elena whispered to herself. "Are we ready for this?" Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden entry of Commander Hawk, who had a grave expression on his face. "Dr. Martinez," he began, his voice laced with urgency, "the colons are retreating, but we've just received word from an unknown faction. The Silurians are making contact. They want a meeting." Elena turned, her eyes locking onto Ivan's with a deep, intense focus. She knew this was the moment. Everything that had happened, the gun, the disruption, the colons' retreat, had led to this. And the Silurians were not just interested in Earth's weaponry. They wanted to see if humanity could prove itself worthy of standing among the stars. "We need to be careful," Elena said, her voice now filled with determination. "We can't let them think we're simply a reactive species. If we want a future among the stars, we have to show them that we're ready to take the next step. It's time for humanity to prove what we're capable of." As Earth readied itself for the Silurian meeting, the weight of the decision before them became even clearer. Would humanity stand its ground and demand its place among the stars, or would it falter under the pressure of forces far greater than it could comprehend? The colons were regrouping, others were watching, and Earth had just one chance to make the right move. The crossroads had arrived. The decision that could change everything. The day had arrived. The moment humanity had feared, and yet secretly yearned for. The Silurians were going to meet with Earth's representatives. The UEF had spent days preparing for this meeting, ensuring they had the best minds on hand to negotiate humanity's future among the stars. The Silurians' message was clear: prove humanity's worth, and earn a place at the table of galactic powers. Fail, and Earth would become a target in a galaxy full of dangerous factions. Elena stood before a vast array of monitors, her heart racing as she reviewed the data one last time. The meeting would take place in a few short hours, and she knew that every move she made from this point forward could shift the course of human history. This was more than a political negotiation. It was a test of Earth's resolve, its spirit, and its future. No longer were they just an isolated planet in a remote part of the universe. Earth was now a player, and their survival depended on how well they performed. "Dr. Martinez, the Silurian envoy is about to enter the designated communications channel," Commander Hawk announced, his voice steady, yet there was an underlying tension. "Are we ready?" Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the screen as she took a deep breath. "We're ready. Let's show them who we are." The screen flickered for a moment, and then the image of the Silurian envoy appeared, an unassuming, floating orb that seemed to shimmer with energy. No face, no recognizable features, only the overwhelming presence of intelligence. Their form was nothing like the species humanity had encountered before, strange, fluid, and disorienting to look at. Yet there was something undeniable about them. A sense of immense power, and perhaps even more importantly, a presence that demanded respect. A soft, resonant voice echoed through the command center, its tone soothing but commanding. Dr. Elena Martinez, Commander Ivan Hawke, and all those who represent Earth, we greet you in the name of the Silaran Accord. You stand at the precipice of a decision that will shape your species' fate. We offer you the opportunity to prove your worth as a sentient race, capable of standing as equals in the Galactic Assembly. Elena took a step forward, her expression resolute. She had prepared for this moment for what felt like an eternity. But now that it was here, she could sense the weight of the decision bearing down on her like never before. We understand the gravity of this decision, Elena said, her voice steady but firm. We have no intention of cowering before any species, no matter how powerful. We will stand on our own 2 feet, and we will prove that humanity deserves a place in the stars. The Silaran envoy seemed to react, its shimmering form pulsing for a brief moment. You speak of strength, Dr. Martinez, but strength is not measured by force alone. It is measured by your ability to endure, to adapt, and to unite when faced with overwhelming odds. Tell us, then, what makes your species worthy of our attention? Elena's eyes burned with conviction. She had thought long and hard about this question, and the answer came to her as easily as breathing. Humanity is a species that has survived against all odds. We are not the most powerful, nor the most advanced, but we have something far more important: resilience. We fight when we should flee, we adapt when others crumble, and we come together in times of need, regardless of race, creed, or background. We are a species that has learned to overcome our own flaws, and we have the potential to be something greater, something more. If we are given the chance, we will prove that we can contribute to the galaxy, not as a burden, but as an ally. The Silaran envoy was silent for a long moment. The floating orb swirled with energy as if deliberating Elena's words. Then it spoke once more, its voice heavier this time. You speak of resilience, of unity. Yet your planet is rife with division, with conflict. Your species has waged wars, torn itself apart, and suffered greatly. What makes you believe that you are capable of transcending these flaws? We are not swayed by idealistic words. We seek to understand if your species has truly evolved beyond its inherent nature. Elena's heart pounded, but she held her ground. She could feel the weight of the galaxy's judgment pressing upon her, but she knew this was the moment to define humanity's future. She glanced at Ivan, who gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. Elena knew what she had to say next. Our history is not without its stains, Elena admitted, her voice quiet but unwavering. But it is not our mistakes that define us. It is our capacity to learn from them, to evolve, and to change. Yes, we've fought wars, and yes, we've torn ourselves apart. But we have also rebuilt ourselves from the ashes. We have seen the cost of conflict, and we have chosen a new path, one of unity, cooperation, and progress. We have the ability to recognize our flaws and correct them. That is what makes us different. That is why we are worthy of a place among the stars. The Silaran envoy pulsed once more, its energy rippling in a way that suggested contemplation. Elena felt the weight of their silence, and in that silence, she felt her own resolve hardening. She knew they weren't just testing her words, they were testing her spirit. Finally, the envoy spoke again, and this time, its voice seemed tinged with something deeper, something almost approving. You have spoken with conviction, Dr. Martinez. Your words carry the weight of your species' history and aspirations. You understand the gravity of the choices before you, and you acknowledge your flaws. This is not something we see often in younger species. We will grant you the opportunity to prove your worth. But be warned, your trial will not be an easy one. Elena's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? The Silaran envoy's energy shifted, becoming more intense, almost overwhelming. You will face the trials of the Accord. Your species must prove that it can be trusted to uphold the values of unity, cooperation, and resilience. You will face challenges not only of your technology and military might, but also of your moral strength, your ability to work together as one. You will face trials of trust, of diplomacy, and of leadership. Should you succeed, you will be granted a seat at the table. Should you fail, you will remain isolated, your future uncertain. Elena took a deep breath. This was it, the challenge that would decide humanity's place in the galaxy. And though fear flickered in her chest, she knew there was no turning back now. "We accept," she said, her voice unwavering. The Silaran envoy pulsed again, this time with a sense of finality. "Very well. The trials will begin shortly. Prepare your species, Dr. Martinez. The galaxy is watching." As the connection ended, Elena exhaled sharply. She had just signed humanity's fate, and there was no going back. The trials would be grueling, the tests unforgiving. But she felt a strange sense of hope rising within her. Earth had just been handed the chance of a lifetime. Now, it was up to humanity to prove that they were worthy. Humanity's trial. The path to unity. The news spread like wildfire. Across every continent, people felt a surge of excitement, fear, and uncertainty. Earth had been chosen, tested, and given the chance to prove itself in the eyes of the Silarans, the galaxy's most influential power. The trials had begun, and the fate of humanity was now in their hands. For Elena Martinez, the weight of responsibility had never been heavier. She stood in the war room of the United Earth Federation, UEF, surrounded by the brightest minds, military leaders, and representatives from every corner of Earth. They were gathered here, not to discuss a strategy for war, but to forge a path toward peace and cooperation with species that were far more advanced than they could even imagine. Commander Ivan Hawke approached her, his face tense but resolute. "The Silarans are already en route. They've scheduled the first of the trials. We've had reports that other species are watching closely, waiting to see if we're truly ready." Elena nodded, her thoughts racing. "We're ready. We have no other choice." The Silaran envoy had given them little information about the nature of the trials. The only certainty was that they would not be a test of technology or warfare. This was a test of something much deeper, something more essential to humanity's survival as a species. It was a test of their ability to cooperate, to trust one another, and to transcend the divisions that had plagued their history. It was a test of their moral fiber and unity. "We must show them who we are," Elena had said repeatedly to the council in the past few days, but the weight of her own words was beginning to sink in, not just as a species, but as a collective force. "We need to prove we can be a force for good in the universe." The first trial was set to take place in less than an hour. It was a diplomatic challenge, a delicate negotiation between Earth and 3 other species, including a powerful interstellar empire and a mysterious collective that no one had ever encountered before. Elena entered the room where the negotiations would take place. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with the weight of expectations. Across the long table, representatives from the 3 species sat in silence, each one an enigma in its own right. There was the Kalzar, an insectoid race known for their calculating intellect and ruthless efficiency. Then there were the Virexi, an energy-based life form that communicated not with words, but through complex waves of light and sound. And finally, there was the Utril, a species of organic, hive-minded beings whose unity could be both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. The Silaran envoy appeared on the main screen, its shimmering form pulsating with an ethereal light. It was almost impossible to grasp its full presence, as if it existed in multiple dimensions at once. Their voice, as always, was calm and deliberate. "Representatives of Earth, we begin your first trial. This will test your ability to engage in diplomacy, to negotiate with others for the greater good. You will have 30 minutes to reach an agreement on the terms of an interstellar trade route that will connect your planet to 3 other factions. The Kalzar, the Virexi, and the Utril will offer their conditions. Failure to reach an agreement will result in a permanent severance of your chances to join the accord." The screen shifted, and a soft, mechanical voice echoed from the Calzar representative, whose elongated, chitinous form seemed unnaturally still. Our terms are simple. 70% of the trade route's profits must be allocated to the Calzar Empire to further the expansion of our colonies. Your Earth will receive a modest share, but nothing more. The Virexi's representative, a glowing orb of shifting light and energy, responded almost immediately, the pulsating waves creating a strange, soothing rhythm in the air. We request 50% of the trade route profits, with the stipulation that Earth allows the establishment of several energy research stations on your world. These stations will serve the greater good of intergalactic energy development. Then the Utril spoke, their voice a harmonious chorus of overlapping sounds. We require complete access to all biological research from Earth. In return, we will ensure the safety of your world and offer mutual protection against hostile forces for a period of 100 years. The terms were steep, contradictory, and seemingly impossible to reconcile. Alina felt her stomach tighten as she processed the information. Each faction had their own agenda, each one focused on their own interests, their own needs. And humanity, standing at the center of it all, would have to navigate these competing demands without sacrificing their integrity. This is the moment, Alina whispered to herself, the first real test of who we are. The representatives from the Calzar, Virexi, and Utril were all watching intently, waiting for Earth's response. Alina stood, taking a deep breath as she stepped forward to the table. We are not a species that will be exploited, Alina said, her voice steady but resolute. We will not sell ourselves out for profit, nor will we allow anyone to dictate our future. But we also understand that this is a new era for humanity, one where we must collaborate for the benefit of all. Our planet will not be a stepping stone for other empires. We are here to build a future, not to be used. The silence in the room was deafening. Alina could feel the eyes of every representative upon her, waiting for her next words. But she wasn't done yet. We will agree to a fair distribution of profits from the trade route, with 40% going to Earth, 30% to the Calzar, 20% to the Virexi, and 10% to the Utril. In return, Earth will allow access to research on energy systems, but under the condition that these stations are shared with other species in the Accord. We will also open our biosphere to a collaborative, non-exploitative research program, where all species can contribute and learn. Her words echoed through the room, and for a moment, the representatives were silent. Then the Silurian voice spoke, its voice tinged with curiosity. Your proposal is intriguing. It suggests a level of cooperation that is rare among younger species. However, the factions you face are not known for their willingness to compromise. We will give you 1 hour to present this proposal. If the other parties agree, you will have passed your first trial. If not, well, you will be judged accordingly. The hour that followed was a blur. Alina's team worked tirelessly behind the scenes, consulting with each faction, tweaking the terms, and attempting to find common ground. She couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation rising in her chest. Every minute felt like a lifetime. And then, at the end of the hour, the representatives returned to the table. The Calzar were the first to speak. Your terms are acceptable. We will abide by this agreement. The Virexi followed suit, their glowing form pulsating with what seemed like approval. Agreed. We will share energy research with all species in the Accord. Finally, the Utril's collective voice resonated. We will accept. Your offer is fair, and we will stand by this agreement. Alina's breath caught in her throat. They had done it. Earth had passed the first trial. The Silurian voice form pulsed once again, this time with something that felt like approval. You have shown great promise. Dr. Martinez, your species has proven it can navigate the complexities of diplomacy and cooperation. The trials will continue, but for now, we acknowledge your success. As Alina stepped away from the table, her heart raced with exhilaration. This was just the beginning, but it felt like a monumental victory. Humanity had faced its first test and emerged victorious, not by force, but by unity, intelligence, and the willingness to work together. The road ahead would be even harder. There would be more trials, more challenges, and more pressure. But Alina knew one thing for certain: humanity had the strength to endure. And in that moment, she truly believed that Earth would have its place among the stars.